Hello, welcome back to the Spartan Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Zachary Lockerman. Today I'm joined with,
Thomas Chavez.
and Tyler Castillo.
so not a super great week for sports. I guess we got some big news. We're going to get into it, guys. First topic, we have potential trade rumors for the NBA. Big names like Zach LaVine and Andre Drummond potentially being on the block. What do you guys think about that?
I've been looking at the what teams could actually trade for a lot of these guys. And for Drummond, there are four teams that I really think could use a center. That's the Raptors, the Nets, the Hornets, and the Celtics. Um, I want to focus on the Hornets because that's a team that's trying to force their way into the playoffs. Essentially, they're one of those fringe teams that if they have a bad series of games, they're just going to be out of it. And having a center like Andre Drummond who can get your rebounds, get you a couple points, that'll be better than Bismack Biyombo. Um, you know, and so that, obviously a trade package for that's probably going to center around either Cody Zeller or Terry Rozier. Those are two of their more middling ground salaries that they could put in there along with something like Malik Monk and draft picks to pull off a Drummond trade. I think the number, even though he's getting $29 million, I think the number to trade for him is 22 million to be able to bring him in. So the Hornets are a team that I really think could use a center like Drummond, especially if they're trying to make a playoff push now. Other than that, the Raptors, I don't really see them having the pieces to make a trade because I don't see them trading Lowry to Cleveland or anyone else that's part of their core like Van Fleet. Um, and the Celtics, they need a center. Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice, not bad, but for a team that needs to go up against Joel Embiid and Bam Adebayo, they need a actual center who can play at least serviceable defense against dominant centers like that. And since they're trying to contend, Drummond's a guy that they really should be pushing to bring in, and that's probably going to be something like Marcus Smart and Tristan Thompson to bring that in. So those are the real pieces. Those are the real teams that I could see conceivably trading for Drummond this trade deadline. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about like mostly the Hornets. I agree with the Celtics as well. And just it's so weird. Like the whole aspect of Andre Drummond's like game as a basketball player is so weird because the dude could put up 30 and 20 and not have any hand in like winning the game. So it's just really weird. And I actually saw on Twitter some NBA like exec said that as well. Like he could put up 30 and 20 and have like no help in getting the win for your team. So like for teams like the Hornets and the Celtics who don't exactly need that star power to go out there and win them a game, and they just need a big man that can get 15 and 15 a night, like say the team like the Hornets and the Celtics, like that's a perfect fit. It's just the only bad thing about Andre Drummond is his contract is ridiculous. Like who wants to take in that much money for a center he's good, but he's not game changing. And, in a time where the big man is getting so like a true center is like really not what everybody wants. Everybody wants to stretch big down there, like a Joel Embiid who can extend it to the 3-point line even. It's just so tough to give away assets or, take in a lot of that money for someone who you really can't count on to do a whole lot other than, shoot a layup or, grab a board. So I don't know. That's interesting. I haven't really looked too much into the trade game for the NBA as a whole. Are the Bulls actually shopping LaVine? Are they looking for something?
He's on an expiring contract, so it's going to be very hard to keep him, especially if he wants to go somewhere where he can compete. The two teams that I could see making a move for him are the Nuggets. They're a team that has been struggling. They're trying to stick on to the playoffs, but they're currently the 7th or 8th seed in the West right now. And that's pretty easy trade. Zach LaVine's only making about $20 million. So that's a much easier contract to trade than Andre Drummond. So that could, for the Nuggets, that's something like Will Barton and JaMychal Green. Those two contracts together can get Zach LaVine no problem. The other team that I could see trading for him is the 76ers. He just put them over that's like a piece to put them over the top. Like you're on par offensively with the 76ers if you bring him in. Or not the 76ers, the Nets, sorry. That's Danny Green and a couple of draft picks pretty easily. not too difficult of a trade to pull off for Zach LaVine with that contract.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking the Sixers too, because they need. It's not that they need the star power, but with teams like you said, the Nets in the East, they're really going to need an extra firing option. Danny Green can get it done sometimes, but he's kind of a liability. Ben Simmons can't really extend to the 3-point line. We know that. They need someone who can do a little bit of everything, and Zach LaVine obviously fits that role really well. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody shoots for him. I definitely want to see him win. He's a star that's been his star. His spotlight from the game has kind of been had a looming thing hiding over it because he plays for the Bulls, and it's the Bulls now. Like, it's not, the Bulls aren't what they used to be, obviously. So see him go somewhere and do something good, play for the Sixers or, whoever it might be. The Nuggets, that would be nice too. They definitely need a good 2 guard out there for, Jamal Murray and Jokic to use to their advantage. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. And I'm excited if he does go anywhere. So, we'll see.
Yep, those are definitely two pieces that can help with a playoff push. But moving on from what could be to what is, the Utah Jazz surprising many with the best record in the NBA. Guys, what do you think has caused this sudden uptick in their play this year? And what surprised you most about it?
You can go first, Tyler.
Well, it's so weird because I'm a basketball fan, and I like to keep up with the NBA, but I don't particularly stay super close during the regular season. Everything starts to heat up near the postseason, which is when I really start to pay attention. But seeing the Jazz in first place in the West is just like, wow, it's like a slap in the face. Like, okay, these guys could do something. But I saw something on Twitter, and it was like the Jazz are kind of like that Hawks team, where all 5 of them started in the All-Star game, and then they lost to LeBron in the playoffs. So I think that the Jazz could be a team like that, but Donovan Mitchell's having an okay year. And it's surprising to see them do so well if he's only having an okay year. Usually you think the Jazz, and you look back to last year, and Donovan Mitchell was literally carrying them on their back until, the Nuggets knocked him off. But it's really surprising. And I know, Thomas, I know you have something to dig deep in on Mike Conley and, people like Jordan Clarkson really contributing and adding to that firepower that the Jazz have right now. So you can go ahead and dig right into that if you want.
Yeah, so the advanced metrics really love Mike Conley this year. Last year, he was abysmal in terms of metrics, and just generally box score, he was also terrible. But he has above average efficiency, above average win shares per 48 minutes on the same usage percentage that he had last year. And so the stats just say he's playing much better than he was in previous seasons. And this is, he's been playing as probably one of the best point guards in the league at this moment. Obviously, the box score is not going to tell you that. He's not scoring as much as Donovan Mitchell or anything, but he has just been a consistent defensive and offensive presence on the court for the Jazz this year. And yeah, when you talk about all-stars, who on the Jazz do you put in? Can you put him, Conley, Gobert, and Mitchell all in at the same time? And it's so crazy how they're not having these outrageous seasons. They're just playing so cohesively. And part of that, I think, is because the team has just been consistently built. They're not very different from what they were last year. They're bringing in relatively the same roster. And Jordan Clarkson, as the 6th Man of the Year candidate, has also been showing up. And so they have that consistency that I think a lot of other teams have been missing, especially when, the Jazz have also not really had too many COVID issues, and they've just been able to keep their product on the floor without having it get ruined by, players missing time for extended periods.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is just each year. I mean, they're a young team. The Utah Jazz are a young team. They're another year older, so that could be a thing too, where all the players are sort of starting to come into their own with some veteran help from Conley. But any last thoughts on the NBA from either one of you?
I just want to add one more thing about the Jazz. It's so interesting to think. I just feel like these guys are such a band of misfits. There's the key pieces. You think of the Jazz, you think of Donovan Mitchell, you think of Rudy Gobert, and then Mike Conley's still kind of new to that team because that trade happened. What was it, last year? That trade
Yeah,
happened
before the season last year.
and then they got guys like Jordan Clarkson and just like Joe Ingles. Like it's just, I think they're just a bunch of band of misfits. But like Thomas said, you can really see they're like a cohesive unit out there. But I just wanted to add that one little last piece. Zach, you can move on from here unless Thomas has anything to add.
Thomas?
Just by playoff time, if the Lakers are healthy, it's still going to be very difficult for the Jazz to get past that. Playoff LeBron is much different than regular season LeBron.
Agreed.
Definitely a big surprise, with the Clippers, the Nuggets, and the Lakers. Very surprising. But hopping on the boat and leaving NBA Island, heading over to the shores of the NFL. A lot of big things happening. J.J. Watt, one of the game's premier defensive players, is a free agent released by the Texans. Or, we're hearing a lot of exciting stuff. Maybe he's going to the Browns. Maybe he's heading to Pittsburgh. What do you guys think?
I can start.
Thomas. Yeah, go ahead.
My thing with JJ Watt's situation is if he wants to go to a contender, he's going to have to take a massive pay cut compared to what he was making in Houston. Teams like Pittsburgh are already capped out as it is, and so trying to bring in JJ Watt is going to be a very difficult task unless he's willing to take significantly less money. I think at this point in his career, he's willing to do that. He's talking about the Browns. I think the Bills are also a serious contender for him. The thing about him is health. He has not been the healthiest player in recent years. That's probably one of the question marks I have for him. Because if he can't stay healthy, you're basically wasting probably at least $10 million. That's probably the cheapest you could get him for on someone that might just spend half the season on your injured reserve. But when he's healthy, he's very dominant. He can still be, this great pass rusher. You have to be tentative about bringing in a guy that has the history of injuries that he's had.
Tyler, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I agree. Obviously JJ Watt, I think we all know he's past his prime now. He's just kind of settling in. He's still forced on the football field for sure. But like Thomas said, health, that's a big thing with him. I don't know. I've been hearing a lot like the Packers, maybe. I think that would be a good fit, even though I would hate to see it since I'm a Lions fan. It would be super cool to see him go to Pittsburgh, but like Thomas said, they're capped out. So like, that's kind of really unrealistic, even though it would be really cool to see the Watt brothers all together in the same team. I don't know. I feel like he might end up at a team where, they're just slightly better than the Texans with a better organization. But then again, he could definitely make it on a contender team. I think it all just really depends on, what he really wants as a salary and whether he cares if he's going to a winning team or if he's going to a team that's, subpar. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. Zach, I don't know. You have any comments on that?
Well, it's pretty clear that I'd say the three teams that are like the most likely destination are the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cleveland Browns, and the Green Bay Packers. Each sort of has a story for why he'd want to go there. The Browns could probably offer him a little bit more than those other two teams, but he is from Wisconsin, so maybe he wants to return home and play. And his brother is on Pittsburgh. For each one of them, I would say honestly, as much as I would love him to be with Pittsburgh, I think most likely he'll end up with the Browns, and what a scary proposition that is with Myles Garrett already being there. As far as him coming to the Steelers, our center retired, so we got a little bit of relief from that. And if Big Ben is being honest in his saying that he's willing to take a huge pay cut, maybe things can change. And also, what would have to happen is Ben would have to take a massive pay cut, and JJ would have to be willing to take a little less money, well, a lot less money that he could probably get. I will say that I don't even see Green Bay as really that much of an option. He doesn't seem like a Green Bay guy. And even though he's from Wisconsin, I just can't see it in my head. One thing I will say about his health is that people forget out of the past 3 years, he has played 2 full seasons. He missed half the season last year, but 2 out of 3 years playing a full 16 games is not too bad as far as health is concerned. And trust me, I'd love to see that guy in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. Any last opinions on this?
I just want to add, like, if he does go to the Browns, like you said, Myles Garrett and JJ Watt, do you guys think that pushes them a little bit farther into the playoffs? Do you think they have a better team there? I think, well, in my own opinion, I think it really would all rely on the offense to actually mold through and Baker to play well and OBJ to come back and have a good year. But do you think, what do you guys think?
Well, you got to realize the Browns are already a young team. Myles Garrett's like what, 24, 25. I mean, they're good. Denzel Ward's going to be another year better. I mean, these guys already have, I would probably say now have the best running game in the league, arguably the best offensive line. I don't think Odell or Landry going anywhere this offseason. So I mean, listen, man. If Baker can be like just like average as a passer and just get carried, and then you add like a defensive force. It doesn't matter if he's 32 years old, 31 years old. Guy's a savage. I mean, and the fact that, listen, we can look at his stats and say, well, maybe he hasn't been getting as many sacks this year. You got to realize they got rid of Clowney, and now he has Myles Garrett on the same line. You can't double both of them. I mean, it's just that it makes me shudder to think that Ben Roethlisberger at age 40 will have to line up against those guys twice a year. I mean, I'm scared to death. I'm not going to lie to you.
Speaking of Baker, this is going to be his first year going into a new season with the same coach that he had from the previous year. So consistency in the offense, and he can finally just develop under the same offense that you need consistency as a young quarterback. He's finally getting that. I think that this could be a breakout year for him. If not, I probably just regress to the mean of being an average quarterback, but this is probably as good a chance as any for you to see a breakout year for Baker Mayfield.
Good point.
Alrighty then.
Just good point. Yeah, I just want to add that.
Moving on, I'm sorry to have done this to you viewers, but we had to save the best topic for last just to make you wait a little bit longer. But the biggest news in sports going on right now, maybe blockbuster a few years ago, you could argue whether or not it is now. The Colts trade Carson Wentz for a third this year, a second next year, which could potentially be a first. Guys, what do you think? First off, what do you think of the trade? Who won? Who lost? And what does this do for the Colts going into this next year?
This is going to be Carson Wentz's best offensive line since the season he would have been an MVP. Obviously, the injury made it so he wasn't. This is definitely 100% the best offensive line he's played behind since then, if not better. So if you can get that kind of season that he had out of Carson Wentz, the Colts are definitely Super Bowl contenders. They have a very solid defense. They have weapons on offense that can complement Wentz. I think the winner of this trade is going to depend heavily on which version of Carson Wentz you get. Are you going to get the Carson Wentz of old when he had a competent offensive line in front of him, or is he going to still be scared of any pass rush that comes near him because of PTSD from the gaping holes that the Eagles offensive line just had? But yeah, so I think this trade is just very contingent on how good Carson Wentz can play. That being said, I still think the Colts fleeced the Eagles in this trade. They wanted a Matt Stafford type return, and they got a third and a second that might become a first, maybe, depending on how good Carson Wentz is able to stay on the field. That's chump change when you really think about it. Quarterbacks nowadays will usually get traded for multiple first-round draft picks, if not more. So, this is nothing for the Colts to give up when you really think about it, to get the potential, of a really good quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. Like there's so much in between. You can either have a very good quarterback or even Carson Wentz at his worst. I think it was a lot to do, like you said, Thomas. He had no O-line essentially. So I think even if you give him a solid offensive line, he doesn't return to the Carson Wentz of old. He'll still be a pretty subpar quarterback. I mean, as long as he gets protection and the big question though, I think with this trade is, can Carson Wentz stay healthy? Like that's a huge thing because the Colts want to be Super Bowl contenders, and that's pretty clear. They're looking for a quarterback, so they picked up Wentz. But if he's hurt and he's out for most of the year, then a lot of it goes down the drain because who wants to have to rely on a backup quarterback to fill a position that they just traded for? And I guess you're right, Thomas. They did trade away, essentially nothing, a third rounder and something that could turn into a first round pick. Actually, that's the Eagles. But I don't know. It's interesting to think about. It'll be interesting to see. I think that, some people are rooting for Carson Wentz to do good because he did have a stellar year. And if he wouldn't have got injured, he would have been MVP. So we'll see. As for the Eagles, I don't think they really lost this trade. I mean, they're going to get more draft pick squad and, see if they can, try and revolve around Jalen Hurts. So they're kind of in a rebuilding process as it is. So I don't know. We'll see. It's pretty interesting. I don't know. Carson Wentz is just a big question mark in the NFL right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think that the Colts have shown themselves to be an incredibly savvy organization. I think they maybe have stretched a little bit with Phillip Rivers last year. I think he was at the end of his rope. But if you really look at this trade, I mean, they didn't give up nothing. They did give up something, but it wasn't a lot. It wasn't something that you can like. If this goes bad, I'm sorry. Am I breaking up at all?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. It looked like it was first.
Yeah,
I apologize.
You're good.
I mean, if you look at what they've given up, I mean, if everything goes bad and Wentz turns out to be terrible and, the change of locale doesn't do anything for, the locker room stuff, then, I mean, you can look at what they gave up and be like, okay, you know what, we're not going to lose sleep over, at night. But look at what Carson Wentz is coming into. A great defense that's going to be great next year, a young team, you could probably argue the third best offensive line in the league with a bunch. I mean, a whole stable of young, talented running backs. I mean, you can say, well, they don't have great receiver help, but there's a draft here in a few months that they can tackle that in, and I'm sure, listen, Antonio Brown is going to be a free agent. If they can get Antonio Brown, this Carson Wentz would have to be terrible to not succeed here. The only thing that we've ever seen wrong with him is that there's injuries, and now he's going to the perfect situation to avoid that. So, I mean, I think it's a really great thing for him. I think it's a really great thing for the Colts, and I just feel like the Philadelphia Eagles, that they didn't have much other choice. I mean, it was something that was inevitable. They probably couldn't have asked for more than they got. So, I mean, I think that's how we got to this situation. Any last thoughts on this?
I just wanted to add on to what you said, Zach. And you're right. I mean, they got a great running back system in Indianapolis. They got 3 dudes that can go out and really do everything in the running game and the receiving game. They do definitely need help with the wide receivers. I was actually just thinking in my head, maybe I know we were just talking about the Browns. Maybe Indianapolis could stretch for OBJ in any way, but that's a possibility. But yeah, I think Carson Wentz definitely needs help on the receiving end. And then they got a great defense to back them up. So, we'll see.
Yep.
Something else to note is Frank Reich was the Colts head coach. Frank Reich, he was the Philadelphia Eagles quarterbacks coach back when they won the Super Bowl and when Wentz had his best season. So reuniting those two might help bolster Wentz's season.
Yep, 100%. It's gonna be an exciting year. We'll see what the Colts do. I think if they play their cards right, I think you could be looking at a Super Bowl contender with these guys, especially because we've seen Wentz, turn water into wine with less talented wide receivers than the Colts have right now. So, who knows what'll happen. But moving on, we're adding a new thing to the show today. We'll call it like touch it or skip it. Work in progress with the name, but I'll bring up a topic in sports. You guys can give a brief opinion. If you don't have anything to say, skip it. First of all, we have Serena Williams, losing this weekend to Naomi Osaka, maybe handing over the title to the next one up. What do you guys think, or if anything at all?
I just think it this matchup that happened was like a Brady Mahomes-esque matchup, like one go against like potentially another goat. Because I mean, this Naomi girl she's a baller on the tennis court,
I
to
think
say
she's
the
won
least.
like
So
20,
it'll be.
I'm sorry. I think she's won. I just
I
wanted
think
to
it's
pop in that
I think it's
20
20
straight
straight,
matches.
right?
Yeah, 20 straight.
Yeah, I think I saw that
Crazy.
on Twitter too. Which is insane. That's insane. Like obviously, but it's sad to see Serena, lose, because I think it's cool that Serena Williams she's like the true go of tennis, for at least women's tennis. Even you could even throw her up with some of the men because she's just that good. But I don't know. It was cool. It was cool to see. That's to say the least. It was cool.
Thomas, anything?
I don't know a whole lot about professional tennis, obviously, but everyone's heard of Serena Williams. She's just one of those household names that her just because that's how good she is. So if this is the end for her, she's had quite the ride. And it's always sad to see the great ones possibly move on, but it's also really exciting for the sport to see the new up and comers, start to make their mark as well. So it'll be interesting to see if she continues her tennis career or if she decides to retire. And it'll also be interesting to see who else, comes up to fight for that spot of best tennis player.
Yep. I mean, and it was definitely tough seeing that the press conference. The last thing I'll put on it is that, hey, listen, regardless of how, Serena Williams goes out, whether it's in a rough press conference or whatever, I don't think that women's sports would be where they are today without Serena Williams. As far as legacy goes, I think she's probably the most untouchable female athlete ever, because, that's the first female athlete I ever heard of. And since then, women's sports has blown up. All right, moving on. College hoops. A lot of well-known programs haven't been doing too well this season. MSU, Duke. What do you guys think about this?
I just think it's so weird to me. I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with COVID, which coming from, like, I'm a Michigan State basketball fan, obviously, but I don't want to use that as an excuse, but it's just so weird to see these teams like just, shake at the fringes because they're having a very subpar years. I mean, Michigan State's barely over 500. Duke is, I think, below 500. Other teams like Kentucky and UNC, it's super weird to see. I don't know. It's like you turn on college hoops to watch those teams, and then they're having very subpar years. So it's just a different and weird feeling. But if some of them can sneak into the tournament, we'll see. It'll be interesting. I mean, that's really college basketball for me, though, is March Madness. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thomas?
This is a weird season, with the pandemic going on. It's even for like all sports, it's really hard to gauge, how good teams are, because you have players missing, you have teams not being able to play. This is, for all these like just historically great programs, it's a really unfortunate situation they find themselves in where, they might start getting on a roll and then all of a sudden they're done for 2 weeks and they have to wait. So I don't know how much you can feed into this specific season of, the future of these programs, because they're definitely going to bounce back in a year or two. Probably most likely next year they'll all be back on top, because that's just the programs they have. They're always going to be dominant. But it's just a weird season. Like so many teams are just like finding themselves, now they're struggling because you had a layoff for 2 weeks. So it's just weird to gauge how good teams are and how good teams aren't. It's just so strange going on right now.
Yeah, I'm sure it also doesn't help that, there's no fans in the stadiums. I mean, let me tell you something. I'm sure MSU hoops would be a lot different with about 50,000 or 25,000 screaming fans in the Breslin. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it sucks that it's going on. But moving on to the final topic, the final mini topic of the day, Trevor Lawrence had some throws at his pro day, but then he opted to get surgery. What do you guys think?
The surgery was on his non-throwing shoulder, right?
Was it?
It was on his left shoulder.
Yeah,
So
it's nothing. It's fine. Not going to do anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he'll recover fine from it, but man, even before, like, literally the day before his surgery, he was throwing lasers on his pro day, which is really what I wanted to touch on this topic is the dude, like, I know it's his non-throwing arm, obviously, but still the dude's throwing complete bombs and he's suffering from an injury. It's crazy to see. I think he's got the biggest boom or bust potential that we've seen in quite some time. So we'll see. It'll be interesting and, we'll see how it ends up.
And, it may be controversial, but I was watching the video of him throwing, man. I saw like distance. I didn't see a whole lot of zip on some of those passes he was throwing. I don't want to be controversial. I just watching that. I don't know how well that arm translates. I don't want to be that guy though.
He definitely has a better arm than Tua does, at the very least.
He has a better arm than me too.
I would assume so, Zach. Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. I want to thank everyone for watching this week's episode of the Spartan Sports. Spartan, what are we called?
The Spartan Sports Podcast.
Okay,
That's what we're called.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not cutting that out, by the way.
No, cut that out. Chill.
No, don't.
I want to thank everyone for watching this week's episode of the Spartan Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Zachary Lockerman, and these are my guests.
Thomas Chavez.
Tyler Castillo. Thanks, guys.
Have a good week.
Bye.